Hey, here are 5 stupid things I've noticed since last time. English major protests graphic novels. A little over 2 weeks ago, a student at Crafton Hills College in Yucaipa, California, her parents, and several friends protested what they called pornographic content, sex, violence, torture, obscenities in several of the graphic novels the student had been assigned to read for an English course. One of the books they objected to, by the way, was Persepolis, which I also read in college, and which is one of the most acclaimed graphic novels ever published. The student said that when she signed up for the course, she was hoping that she'd be reading stuff more like Batman. Well, I hate to be the one to break it to her, but most Batman comics that are significant enough to be studied at the college level are packed with sex, violence, torture, and obscenities. If she was this outraged over Persepolis, she'd probably want to stage a book burning after reading The Dark Knight Returns. John Hagee wants to jail women for blaspheming during sex. John Hagee, pastor of Cornerstone Church in San Antonio, Texas, and guy whose picture you see next to the word blustery in the dictionary, complained in a recent interview about how casually people take the Lord's name in vain. He even went so far as to say that women who cry out things like, "Oh God," or "Jesus Christ," during sex should be jailed for such offenses. Well, I guess that means Hagee's wife is safe. Oh! Because she's so pious. Texas prepares to enact new abortion restrictions. On July 1st, a new law goes into effect in Texas that will render abortion practically unavailable for an estimated 1 million women living in the state. The U.S. Supreme Court could still act to stop the law from going into effect until it's had a chance to review the matter, and who knows, by the time you're watching this video, that may have happened. But even if that does happen, women in Texas will still face the very real possibility that in the near future they will be living in a state where there is one abortion clinic for every 700,000 women of reproductive age. The Supreme Court has previously ruled that states cannot enact restrictions that would place an undue burden on women seeking an abortion. And look, I'm just a layman. I don't mean to tell you folks in the black robes how to do your jobs, but on the undue burden thing, I would say this fucking well qualifies. NRA board member blames shooting deaths on murdered pastor. One of the 9 people murdered by Dylan Roof at Emmanuel AME Church week before last was Clementa Pinckney, a pastor at the church and a member of the South Carolina State Senate. The day after the shootings, Charles Cotton, a member of the board of directors of the National Rifle Association, posted on a web forum saying that Pinckney and the other 8 victims were dead because Pinckney had voted against legislation in the state Senate that would have legalized the concealed carrying of firearms. Right, if Roof's victims had been armed, then they could have defended themselves against Roof and then been shot a few minutes later when the police showed up and found 9 black folks with guns standing over a dead white guy. In all seriousness, Cotton is a piece of shit, but he is far from the only person trying to blame this shooting on anything other than the factors that actually caused it. Conservatives fault everything but racism for Charleston shooting. Despite the fact that it was clear almost immediately that the victims at Emmanuel AME Church had been murdered by a white supremacist because they were black, conservative pundits and politicians have been trying everything they can think of to blame the crime on some factor other than racism. Steve Doocy, the Fox and Friends host they keep around just so Brian Kilmeade can seem like less of a dipshit by comparison, or maybe that's the other way around, even wondered on the air why some folks are calling this a hate crime. Then he worked it out. See, all of the victims were at church, right? So maybe it's a hate crime because they were murdered because of their Christianity. Maybe. Or, and this is kind of a stretch, so try to stay with me on this, maybe it was fucking racism. And maybe all you guys who are trying to make it about something other than racism so we can avoid taking a tiny shred of responsibility for how racist this country still is should shut the fuck up. The hardest part is only picking 5. Catch you next time.